This year's African Economic Conference theme is one that is not new. We are looking at industrialization and imperatives for sustainable development. But let me first start by talking about the different format of this year's conference. In previous conferences where the youth have participated to share their research experiences, their participation has been sort of separate from the main event. Right? And the AEC was actually originally to assist youth to share their experiences. This year, what we've done is to integrate the youth in the main panel events. And this is important because it helps them share their experiences with policymakers and also for policymakers to have new insights. Of course, when we talk about industrialization, we've been talking about this for several years. So it's good to hear the insights of the youth in this issue. The second point I'd like to make is that we talk a lot about the challenges of industrialization. And this year's sessions, we're hearing a little bit about some of the practical solutions. And going forward, we've talked about how value chains, global or regional value chains, can help Africa to industrialize. What I would like to hear more about is how we're supporting SMEs in these value chains. Africa has a lot of SMEs that are producing and doing a lot of great things. But because they are operating in the informal sector, we don't even really know what is happening in those sectors. And going forward, I believe that countries need to invest in creating SME industrial parks. And what are these? These would be dedicated support to SMEs, where we provide them with the capacities to improve the quality of their products. We provide them with access to finance, all in one space, and then link them up to the bigger industrial plants and entities. Currently, our industrial parks tend to focus on the big companies. And sometimes these industrial parks are totally delinked from the local markets. So the backward linkages, meaning the connection to the local systems, is missing, which means that the employment generation that could feed into these industrial parks is missing. Now, if we took these SMEs and provided them that dedicated support, the first thing we'll be doing is to formalize them, but without forcing them to be formalized, because we're providing dedicated support to them. The second thing is that we would be then creating a potential larger market for taxation, in the sense that as they begin to grow, they become productive members of society in a formalized way, and their capacity to pay into the tax system would also be enhanced. Third thing is that we would be actually addressing and creating a middle class, right? A viable middle class based on the SMEs, and this would address the issue of inequality. So as we move forward in our discussions on industrialization, we need to be more practical in terms of our orientation, and we also need to feed some of these outcomes from these meetings into policy changes. So going forward, we also have to ask ourselves, after each of these conferences, what are the changes that have happened? We also need to bring our policymakers into these forums to see how there has been any policy uptake from the previous sessions or events. So a stock taking is very critical, because we don't want to come back 10 years again talking about industrialization. Let me conclude by saying that the imperative of sustainable industrialization places a higher benchmark on African industries. The European industrialization was not restricted in terms of the kind of fossil fuels or energy they used to industrialize. Now, Africa is being asked to industrialize, but in a green way. We need support and technology to make and harness our green technologies. But there are also opportunities because Africa has a vast amount of green minerals, and we also have green assets in the form of carbon sinks. In other words, we have these forests that absorb carbon, and this also puts us in a position to trade those assets for resources. So monetizing our carbon assets is critical. In this regard, as we look forward, we need to see how we add value to our green minerals and also how we mobilize resources by monetizing our carbon assets. So I look forward to the outcomes of this event and hope that our next conference will be talking about the successes and the outcomes of the previous conference so that we can see how we're actually moving forward.